pleasure and an honor to have with us Chacham Avraham Faur. As you all know, we're related. Right? I've mentioned Chacham Faur many times, and to have his son with us, it's really a pleasure, really an honor. And I'll just say something now that maybe towards the end I'll ask you again something about it, but my first meeting, the first time I ever was here in Sha'arei Tzion of Great Neck was approximately 12 years ago when Chacham Faur was invited to be the rabbi for the high holidays. He was brought in to be the rabbi for the high holidays. I heard there were in-between rabbis here at some point, so he was invited for that, and I was by my parents, and somebody was gonna go with him, come here with him. So I volunteered. Obviously, I wanted to come, and that's the first time ever I came to this knis. Little did I know that I was gonna end up being here and giving a derasha from the same place that I heard his beautiful derashot, and the rest is history. And to have you, Chacham Avraham, with us, it's a real pleasure and an honor. We have been learning about Hanukkah in depth. We focused much more in the history of Hanukkah, on the different miracles of Hanukkah. We went to the museum. I understand today a little better what the war, or how the war happened and how it unfolded. And I'm looking forward today to hear a little more about the clash of mindset between the Greek world and the Jewish world. That's the title of the class, and we'll hear a lot from Chacham Avraham. So, Bechavod, the Rabbi Avraham Faur is a rabbi in Ohel David Shlomo, a rabbi in Flatbush, a rabbi for many, many years. Bechavod, Hazak Baruch, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Real pleasure.
So it's nice to be here after, I don't even know how many years. Is it 30 years? I was here when you just started out, maybe in the 90s, visiting for a bar mitzvah or something like that. And I was really awestruck. So beautiful. What a beautiful Bet Knesset. Just a special feeling to be here. Special feeling to see Chacham David. I know I'm biased. He's my cousin. I really think he's such a fine Talmid Chacham. Represents our values, represents our ways of thinking, represents our ways of making Pesach Halacha. So great to see a beautiful knis with a fine Talmid Chacham. And wow, I also met some of you, so really nice to meet you all, and enjoyed this so far. So I hope this is enjoyable for you. And I'm thinking, so you all heard of Hanukkah, so you all know the wars. I don't have to tell you about the wars because it's, many historians, people who are experts, probably can describe the physical battles. I want to talk to you about a different type of battle. I want to talk to you about the intellectual battle. And this battle, it did reach a climax in the holiday of Hanukkah, in as much as the Greeks just didn't want the Jews to have an independent state. Okay, but there's something deeper. There's an underlying intellectual clash, and I would even say a clash of civilizations. So I want to bring to your attention the different modalities of thinking. Jewish thinking versus Greek thinking. But it's not just Greek thinking, because Greek civilization, Greek values are the predominant civilization. So we all live in America, and we're all Westerners, and I'm going to tell you some ideas that might just shake you up a little, perhaps. And it should shake you up, because naturally, if we are Americans and we watch American TV and we follow the cultural trends in America, for better or for worse, and we're influenced intellectually, so it's natural that if I introduce to you some ideas that are foreign and even clash with the culture we live in, maybe we'll get our feathers ruffled just a little. So I apologize for that, but I was asked to explain, so I will explain. And I'm not getting into politics, by the way. Nobody get nervous. No politics. Today is a day for intellectual enjoyment. We will not talk about Democrats, Republicans, woke, anti-woke. None of that. Nothing to do with that. This is an intellectual journey. All right. So I'll start by saying as follows. Two diametrically opposed concepts of truth. For the Greeks, seeing is believing. I see somebody beautiful, I become attracted to the beauty of that individual, and the notions that I develop about that individual are actually subservient to that initial seeing is believing. Initially, I was struck by the beauty, and now everything else will conform to that initial vision. So that's Greek thinking. The Greeks were obsessed with architecture, beautiful pillars, beautiful sculptures, art. But it's not just in the art. If you look at the literature of the Greeks, whenever they would write something, you would see in their literature flowing descriptions of physical appearances, of the landscape, colors, the way people look, the way the gods looked. Seeing is believing. Shalom Aleichem. What's the Hebrew alternative to seeing is believing? Does anybody know? Hearing. Hearing. In the Gemara, you have a lot of arguments. How do they resolve the arguments? Does anybody say, he looks like a big rabbi? That's it. No. Does anybody know how many rabbi in the Gemara look? I mean, if it's relevant to a story, but okay. What's the word in the Gemara when you want to persuade someone? What do we say? Is there anybody here who studies Gemara? Ta?
Talmud.
No, Talmud. Talmud means that. That's what word. But what do we say in the Gemara? Ta? Shema. What does Shema mean? Listen. So first of all, in Hebrew, the word Shema means to hear, right? But it has another meaning. It means to listen, to pay attention. So sometimes, I could be talking, and I said I wasn't going to talk about politics, but let's say we'll have a political argument. You're telling me something, and I'm telling you something, and you're not listening to me, and I'm not listening to you. I hear you, and you hear me, but I'm not listening. So in Hebrew, the word Shema also means to listen, but it has another meaning. It means also to understand, right? So when I listen to someone, I begin to understand something that I didn't understand before. But it has another meaning. It also means to accept. So here you have the intellectual process for the Jew. I want to hear. You disagree with me? You have a different opinion? You disagree? I want to hear you. I'm going to listen. I'm going to try to understand what you're saying. And you may enlighten me with your words. And that's what the Gemara is. The whole Gemara is ta shema. Shema teta. A lesson. You hear the lesson. You understand the lesson. And that's how the Chachamim persuade each other. That's how the Chachamim learn new things. So I want to go more deeply into this concept. I'm going to ask a sacrilegious question in a minute. Does anybody know how Zeus looked? A Greek god. Say he was a god of thunder, lightning. There's a statue of Zeus somewhere in Greece, and he's holding a bolt of lightning and a scepter and an eagle.
Long beard.
Okay.
Yeah.
What?
Long beard.
And a long beard. Yes. Yes. Does anybody know who was the goddess of war? Athena. So she has a spear, a shield, I think a helmet. Okay, here's a sacrilegious question. Does anybody know how God is described in the Torah visually? The very question is sacrilegious, it's blasphemous. There is no visual aspect to God. We're completely repelled by the very notion that somebody would even ask that question. So in our synagogue, we have chas v'shalom, anything visual representing the Almighty? Of course not. Because for us, the ultimate truth is not what the eyes see, but what the mind perceives. And what the mind perceives is far greater than what the eye can see. And I want to show you how this happens. So you ready? You ready to listen? All right. There are two types of human perception. I'm talking about the brain now. The brain has two separate faculties. There is on the one side what is known as simultaneous synthesis. I will explain that. There is on the other side what is known as successive synthesis. I will explain that. So the brain can synthesize information. Okay, let's start with simultaneous synthesis. So I'm looking at this room, and I can immediately tell that you are sitting in the back, right? My mind takes the visual data points, it takes the colors, it takes the shapes, and I understand because my mind can synthesize the visual data points and create a spatial continuum. So I understand the reason you look a little smaller than you do is not because you're smaller, it's because you're farther, right? And I understand that this is not part of the table because the color is different. And yet this is part of the table, even though there's two different colors there. So my mind knows how to differentiate the borders of different objects. That's an incredible thing. Now, anybody here involved in robotics? Nobody? So one of the great challenges for robots, is there somebody that, no, you don't have to say who you are, okay. One of the great challenges for robots is how do you allow a robot to see? Well, what's the issue? So give it a camera and it can see. Well, it doesn't work. Because in order to see, you have to be able to, again, take visual data points and put them together intelligently. Now, the brain does this automatically. It's truly a marvel. But they couldn't get robots to see properly. So they started with stereophonic cameras, two cameras, and still the algorithms had to be developed and developed and developed until the robot was able to distinguish people, objects, shapes, depth, dimensions. But we do it in our mind, and that's called simultaneous synthesis. Why simultaneous? What do you think? What does simultaneous mean?
Quickly.
Quickly.
Same time.
Same time. Same time. Right? So I create this visual image, and all the data points exist at the same time. I'm looking at the room. Everything is clear. My mind understands what it's looking at. There is another type. There is another function of the brain. It's called successive synthesis. And let me explain to you what successive synthesis is about. Successive synthesis has to do with time. So imagine you have space, and one of the great chidushim of Albert Einstein is that in examining the cosmos, he introduces a fourth dimension, time. Okay, so time is a real thing. So what is it that you synthesize in the temporal axis? The brain does it. In fact, every person sitting in this room right now is doing it. And the answer is, you hear. You hear sounds. And you have the ability to put the sounds together, right? And you synthesize the sounds and you create in your mind, for example, it doesn't have to be this, words, sentences. If I'm going to say a sentence now, Great Neck had a little more snow than Brooklyn. In order for your brain to understand the message, your brain has to form a continual data point, in this case not visual, but auditory data, and synthesize it together across the time axis. Now the words disappear. So let's say now my wife takes me to the Metropolitan Museum, and I'm looking at a beautiful Van Gogh. And my mind sees it, and at first I'm like confused, I don't know what I'm looking at, but then I get it. Wow, that's beautiful. Okay, and I'm looking at the painting, and the painting doesn't disappear. But when I say a sentence, it's gone. And yet the brain has the ability to capture that sentence, and the reminiscence of the sentence creates information within my mind, and my mind captures that information. So these are two different ways of thinking. These are two modalities. Now, they had scientists who examined brain lesions. And they found out that, for example, if a person has a lesion in a part of the brain which affects his temporal axis, so they would come to the person and they would say 3 words. Repeat the 3 words. Bird, cat, dog. Now repeat it. Now he has a lesion in the brain. So instead of saying, and it's affecting his ability to synthesize along the temporal axis. So instead of saying bird, cat, dog, he would say, for example, bird, dog, cat, or he would say bird, dog, watermelon, or he wouldn't be able to repeat the sequence because the temporal function of his brain has been impaired. But if you told him, look at a room, and I want you to describe what you see in the room, he would be able to do it like any other human being. Because these two modalities of thinking are separate from each other. They are as separate from each other as Greeks in their thinking are separate from Jews in their thinking. So I'm going to take a moment now. I'm going to allow you to ask questions because I said a lot. And I want to make sure that you understood the difference between successive and simultaneous synthesis. I want to go to part 2, but I just want to make sure everybody got the first ideas clearly. If you need me to repeat it, I'd be happy to do so. Is there anybody here who has a question, a doubt? Do not be embarrassed. I will. Yes, sir.
So, I mean, the two modalities I understand, right? And I see how you're directing it with regards to kind of Greek form and way of thinking versus Jewish. But is there any interplay between the both from either side? Meaning, meaning, okay, Greek thinking being, that one faculty that takes in what it sees versus, Jewish thinking, what you hear and listen. But is there a blend between the two with Jewish eyes and the same from the Greek side?
Yeah, okay. I like that question because oftentimes people get involved in dogma and they're like, you're either this or you're that. And people don't know how to organize themselves intelligently. And that was an intelligent question. The answer is yes, absolutely. Meaning, it's true that for the Greeks, the predominant form of judgment is based upon the visual. That is true. But Greeks have music, and they'll listen to music, and they will enjoy the music. Now, when you listen to music, you're actually synthesizing the different notes. Until now I was talking about words, but you can synthesize notes. Greeks have Plato and Socrates, and they're having this dialogue, and they're having arguments, and the argument is taking place through language. So it is not to say that the Greeks reject the auditory, but rather that everything is subservient to the auditory. Now let's go to the Hebrews. For the Hebrew people, what is the one word that appears in the Torah over and over and over again? Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Over and over and over again. V'haya aikev tishme'un. Right? Shema beni musar abicha ve'al titosh Torah emecha. Over and over again. But is this the word re'eh appear in the Torah? Yeah. Re'eh. So it's not to say that to be a Hebrew means that we reject the visual, that the visual has no importance. I'll give you a proof. And maybe this is a great way to think about it. In the Torah, do we describe the way anybody looks?
Other than Yosef.
Yosef.
Only Yosef.
Right, Yosef. Okay.
There's only one in the whole Torah.
Interesting, Yosef.
Men.
Only man in the whole Torah, sorry.
Okay.
Beauty, yeah.
Okay. Do we know? Okay, and I'll get to that in a moment. Do we know how Avraham Avinu looked? Maybe he was tall. Probably was tall, but
Yeah.
What about Isaac, Yaakov? How about Moshe Rabbeinu?
Charlton.
Moses, Charlton Heston, Cecil B. Zamil. It has to be.
It's sacrilegious, Rabbi. I have to go.
It has to. That's the thing. Yeah, we because we're Greek, we would like it if it ended up that Moses looked like Charlton Heston. He might have looked like Woody Allen. It's possible. It's possible. He could have looked like Woody Allen. I don't know.
The Midrash says he was very tall, right?
What?
The Midrash says he was very tall.
Oh, but that was allegorical. 10 amot tall, and he jumped 10 amot, and his mateh was 10 amot, and he Masechet Berachot, and he jumped up and he hit the heel of Og Melech HaBashan. It's an allegory, but we really don't know what he looked like, do we? Right? So why? Because it's irrelevant. Because we don't judge people by how they look, we judge people by what they say. But this is one thing I learned from my father. My father taught me respect all rabbis, respect everybody, because I was young and I was like, impetuous. He said, you have to have respect to everybody. But he says, when you judge someone, the ultimate frame of reference is how he speaks. Listen to the words, and then when you hear the speech, you can make a judgment, a correct, valid judgment. Okay, Yosef. What do we know about Yosef? Because it's important to the story. You wouldn't understand the story had you not known that Yosef was very handsome. So he was very handsome, and Potiphera, and the whole story with the wife. She was okay. All right. We do know another person in the Tanakh, male, David HaMelech. Why do we know that David HaMelech was Admoni? Because now we understand why people were like contemptuous of David HaMelech, right? So you remember the story when Shemuel HaNavi comes to Yishai and he says, one of your sons is going to be the king of Israel. And he's like, wow, one of my sons. So he immediately brings in the Bechor, and the Bechor was very tall. And Shemuel HaNavi says the following words. He says, Neged Hashem Yeshachor. He says, this person is worthy to be the Mashiach of Hashem. Because he was tall and he was handsome. And God tells him, no, that's not the way. Because he says, Ha'adam yireh la'inayim, v'Hashem yireh la'levav. You're looking, Shemuel, you're looking at the physical. That's not the way I look at things. God says, I look at the person's mind, his heart. Yeah, I look at him inside. And in this, we learn the lesson that we don't judge people by the physical appearance. David HaMelech, on the other hand, he was a redhead. Why would that be kind of annoying to a Jew? Because Edom, Esav, he was Admoni, he was red, he was this. So now we know the story. Now you understand the story. Yishai is telling, one of my sons is going to be the Mashiach. So they bring the first son, not him. The second son, not him. The third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh son, not him. And Shemuel goes to Yishai. He says, is there no one else? And what does Yishai say? That's it. No one else. Halas. But Shemuel says, but it can't be. There has to be someone else. He didn't want to tell him because the other person, he had red hair. He looked like Esav. You understand? He was embarrassed. So you see the mistake is there. Shemuel is corrected by Hashem. Yishai is kind of hesitant because he sees the son has that red hair. He looks, like a goy. He looks like like Esav. This is going to be the king of Israel? So finally they bring him in. He says, this is him. Hashem tells Shemuel, this is him. Take out the Shemen HaMishcha and anoint him as a king. So that's where the Torah will tell you how somebody looks. To teach you the lesson that we don't judge by looks. To teach you the lesson that even Shemuel HaNavi made that mistake. And Hashem corrected him. So, but there is a case in the Torah where looks is important. So I don't want to put down looks. This is a great question because it actually brought me to topics that I wanted to discuss. Kohen, the Kohen Gadol. It says the Torah, lechavod ultifaret, his clothing were beautiful clothing that brought honor and glory. So what does this mean? So you have the Kohen Gadol, he has to dress in a beautiful way. But here's the thing, the clothing is supposed to reflect something about the Kohen Gadol, something about his internal spiritual state. The clothing do not create the Kohen Gadol. It's the Kohen Gadol who, so to speak, is worthy of the clothing. So in the days of Bayit Sheni, the Bayit Sheni was 420 years. Second Bet HaMikdash existed for 420 years. What happened during those 420 years? The Gemara in Masechet Yoma, Daf Tet Amud Aleph, it brings that in the 420 years of the Bayit Sheni, it says there was Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Yochanan Kohen Gadol was 80 years Kohen Gadol. 80 years. Then it says there was Shimon HaSadiq. He was 40 years Kohen Gadol. 80 and 40, 120. Then it brings Yishmael ben Gurdiada, another 11 years. And then it says, and there was Ben Pavi, another 10 years. And then it says, after these Kohanim Gedolim, you had 300 Kohanim Gedolim. 300 Kohanim Gedolim. That means every year the Kohen Gadol would go into the Kodesh HaKodashim with the beautiful clothing, kavod, tif'aret, and he wouldn't finish the year. He would die. But the clothing, they're beautiful. So the purpose of the beautiful clothing for the Kohen Gadol is to reflect the internal beauty of the Kohen Gadol. But if he doesn't have the internal beauty, you had a special chain on the Kohen Gadol that if he enters the Kodesh HaKodashim and he dies, you pull him out with the chain because he wasn't worthy to enter the Kodesh HaKodashim with the clothing. Without the clothing, he wasn't worthy to enter the Kodesh HaKodashim. So what do we see here? Yes, we should dress, for example. We do want to appear nice. The Talmid Chacham, the Gemara says, has to appear well-dressed. We're not against that. But that's not the ikar, that's not the predominant truth. The predominant truth is the internal truth. The external clothing is there to represent the internal, right? But if you have the external clothing and you don't have an internal neshama, ban minan, God forbid, the neshama is not where it should be, it's meaningless. So you understand this concept, and that's the Jewish way of thinking. Okay. So let's think for a second. So imagine you're a Greek, and for you the visual is the main thing. So reality is static, like you see reality as it is. And this is why the Greeks were so obsessed with, for example, geometry. This is why the Greeks were so obsessed, for example, Plato. He had the idea of the Platonic ideals, the perfect triangle, right? Or the perfect square, or the most beautiful woman. What is true beauty, right there? So these are the Platonic ideals. They believed that the universe just exists. It existed eternally. And you know what? Till about 100 years ago, the scientists believed that the universe existed eternally. It was called the steady state theory. Google steady state theory, and you'll see that this was a predominant theory. It was an imposition of Greek thinking upon science. But what happened? The Jews, so when you see things, the painting always exists. It's a static reality. It's there. I see it. Well, wasn't there a painter? Somebody painted it. So they look at the universe. It's there. I see it. There's order. The order is amazing, beautiful. It's just there. The Chachamim teach us. The Torah tells us what? Sheshet Yemei Bereshit. Successive. So over the temporal passage of time, the temporal axis, you have different things happening. So reality is not static. It's not like that painting. It's more like my voice. So the sentence exists, and then it disappears, and there's another sentence, then there's another sentence, and you put everything together. So we have Ma'aseh Bereshit. So Ma'aseh Bereshit is looking at the universe in a dynamic way, and it happens to be, and I'm not here to preach about science and Torah, but it just happens to be that scientifically it's correct, right? The scientists discovered the Big Bang Theory, and they realized that the Jewish view of reality is a correct view of reality, back to Jewish thinking. So when I speak and you hear my voice, what is your brain doing? It's interpreting the words, correct? Automatically, you just take it for granted. So now, let's look at the universe. So, for the Greek, it's just there. It's like, there's order. Okay, nice, beautiful. For the Hebrew mind, we view the creations as the speech of God. So how do we describe creation in Sheshet Yemei Bereshit? What is the one word that repeats itself over and over again? Huh? Vayhi, yes, but what comes before Vayhi? Vayomer. What does Vayomer mean? Speech. So we view the universe not just as things exist. There's there's a beautiful triangle out there, perfect triangle. No. But rather, we're looking at the universe as the dynamic speech of God. So when you see the sunrise in the morning, what do you say? You'll say, oh, uboreh choshech. You know what you're really saying? You're really saying that at the moment you're looking at the sunrise, and now I'm going to tell you how to look at the sunrise as a Jew, at that moment, God is speaking to you. That sunrise is there for you. Meaning if you're standing alone on a hilltop, and there's a beautiful sunrise or sunset, or there's something beautiful, you can be walking in the forest and you see the foliage in the fall. At that moment, God is speaking. That's how God speaks to us. Vayomer Elohim yehi or. Vayomer Elohim yehi rakia. Vayomer Elohim tacheh haaretz. Right? So, I have this beautiful bread. It's bread. I mean, there was a baker, and there was an oven, and there was fire, and somebody ground the flour, and what do we say? Hamotzi lechem minas. At that moment, God is giving me the bread. I mean, so God is always speaking to us. It's an unfolding of reality. So yes, was there a baker? Yeah, there was a baker. And was there a system that allows for the wheat to be harvested? Yes, there's a system that allows for the wheat to be harvested. So there's a great Chacham in the Gemara, and he says, wow, all this was created for me. God created all these people working in the field, and God created all these people who turn the wheat into grain, and the grain into flour, and the flour into dough, and then the dough into bread. And all this was done for me. But here's the thing. He wasn't just talking about himself. You see, that Chacham recognized that God is constantly communicating with him. There's nothing special about that. I mean, he was special in his knowledge. But in that thing, every single one of us to feel exactly what the Chacham felt. So part of the Greek universe is it's opaque. Things just are. There is no message because there are no words. And if there are no words, so what is it? Okay, it exists. For us, the entire cosmos is God speaking to us. And what is Moshe Hashem? Brother, I don't have my phone. Somebody give me the time.
5 to 10. 5 to 9.
5 to 9, okay. I was getting scared. You said 5 to 10 for a second. I'm like, okay. All right, okay. Thank you. 5 to... Stop me at 9 o'clock, okay? Or 9:15?
Yeah.
9:15, okay. All right. Yeah. So there's order in the world. For us, the order itself is amazing. That is the amazing thing. I'm going to tell you what Albert Einstein said, and I'm going to tell you what Rabbi Avu said. Rabbi Avu said in the Gemara, everybody thinks, what's the most amazing thing? Right, so we have a vision of the future, the Mashiach will come. And after the Mashiach comes will be the Bet HaMikdash. And after the Bet HaMikdash, there's going to be a period of Tihat HaMetim, whatever the order is. Like not a class about Mashiach. So there's going to be Tihat HaMetim. So Tihat HaMetim is the most amazing thing, right? People have been dead, and so they're going to come back to life. It's unbelievable. And the Pasuk says, Billah HaMavet LaNesach, there's going to be no more death. Amazing. Okay. The Abu says, you know what's more amazing than Tihat HaMetim? He says in the Gemara, rain. Rain? Rain. There's nothing amazing about rain. It's just rain. What is rain? It's just like, okay, water evaporates, the sun warms the ocean, water vapor goes into the atmosphere, eventually forms clouds, the clouds form rain, rain falls on the ground. What's amazing about that? So again, if you're a Greek and you're just looking at the words, like, okay, there's an order. But he said, this is unbelievable. The fact that we have this water that's drinkable, there's a system in the world which brings water to man, which is exactly what we need to live. That's the miracle. The order is unbelievable. And he says it's more incredible than Tihat HaMetim, is the fact that we have water. So, you know who else said that? Albert Einstein. Thank you. He says the most incomprehensible thing about the universe. Albert Einstein saying this. That Rabbi Avu was in the Gemara. Albert Einstein, you know who he was, 20th century. He says the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible. He said, why should it be like that? Why should the universe be comprehensible? So he's like looking at this, not as a Greek, But as a Jew, he says, how does this make any sense? He's putting the whole thing together. Now we understand it's God's speech. So God's speech is comprehensible. God's speech makes sense. There's a certain logic to the way God puts words together, the way God put the universe together. So we have two books. So one book is the universe. We view the universe as God's book, as God's writing. And when Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't like the story, what does he tell Hashem? So, you know the story, Moshe Rabbeinu is there, the Jewish people sin, they do Egel HaZahav, and God is like, he tells Moses, I have an idea. Moses, this story is not a good story. How about I kill the Jewish people, and you will be like the Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, you will be the sole survivor, and I'll make a new nation from you. That's the new story. That's what God is telling Moshe Rabbeinu. So what does Moshe Rabbeinu answer God? I don't like that story. And if that's the story, I don't want to be a character in the story. Erase me from your book. It's a book. So each one of us is a character in this book, right? And God is speaking to us, and we're the characters, and we're acting, and there's a certain order in the world, and we know how to put things together intelligently, because even God is not speaking at this moment. I said, why doesn't God tell me what to do? But that's not intelligent. If I just told you something, I say E equals MC squared. Okay, I just said that. Does it exist at this moment? Well, yeah, it's in your mind. So why doesn't God tell me what to do? He does. He did. He does. Just, we have to learn how to listen. So an intelligent person doesn't repeat himself over and over and over and over again. We have the Torah. We know he's supposed to be Shomer Shabbat. You know, Shomer Shabbat, there's going to be consequences for not being Shomer Shabbat. There's consequences. The Torah says so. It's right there. So why doesn't God tell me what to do? He does, and he did. And he always does. And he tells us over and over again. But we're just not listening because we think like Greeks. And we don't understand how to put things together. There's an intelligent message in each and everybody's life sitting in this room. But you have to pay attention. Shema means to hear. Shema means to listen. Pay attention. Shema means to understand. And the last meaning was Shema means to accept. So that's the book that we exist in. So for the Jewish people, there are two books. The first book is the Cosmos, and the other book is the Torah. And I'm going to end with the following idea. The Jewish people, every nation has a particular symbol that characterizes that nation. So maybe for America, the idea was freedom. For the French, they had the French Revolution, liberty, egalitarianism, what was it, liberté, égalité, and fraternity, fraternité. Okay, every nation has its particular symbols. The Jewish people, for us, we were known in the Arabian Peninsula in the days of the birth of Islam as Ahlu il-Kitab, which means basically the people of the book. What does that mean? So where do you find truth? Okay, I'll find truth, I'll go to a beautiful mountaintop, I'll meditate, I'll be alone, and I'll somehow connect. I don't know with what, but I'll connect, and I'll find the truth. You know what, for the Jewish person, the ultimate source of truth is? The book. The book. We were known as the people of the book because every single bit of wisdom that we have as a nation is somehow derived from the book, right? We have our values, respect the elders. Where does that come from? And if there was no book, would we respect our elders? Be honest.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you just said yes.
I said
Yes.
props.
Okay, and that's a valid answer.
No.
Everybody, you said no.
No, Western values comes from the Torah.
So I'm going to tell you something,
It's
Maurice.
like Greek philosophy, we're not Hobbes now.
I was
It's not
like
like
Westerners
we're,
respect their parents.
Okay, so let me explain.
We all be
I,
big
all good,
kings.
well, I accept it. But the Torah does say in Parashat Kedoshim, "Mipnei seva takum ve'adarta pnei zaken." And I know you're all saying, well, if the Torah didn't say "Mipnei seva takum ve'adarta pnei zaken," I would still show respect to the elders. That's what the argument is. And I'm just going to give you a counterpoint, if I may. So the Torah was we were in Har Sinai, we were in Israel, and we were studying this pasuk, and we read this pasuk, and we studied with Moshe Rabbeinu, and he taught it us in all the Moed, and he gave us, what was the world like back then? What was it like back then? So, I actually once read a survey of different nations, different people, it wasn't all nations, it was tribes, but okay, different people, and what they did with the elderly. I just read this because it was interesting to me. So I went to, well, there was a time I said I went to Columbia University, and I was like very proud of it. Whatever. Okay, whatever, okay. So I went to Columbia University, and they had an amazing library there. Like, so they had this thing where you have the main library, and then you would kind of go like, on the side, there was this doorway, and you'd be like in this, like kind of a dark kind of like maze of different floors, right? And I don't know how many floors there were, and then like these different like hallways and just stacks of books and stacks of books and stacks of books, and you're all alone. So I used to like picking books just like for the fun of it on different things, what it was like to build a Panama Canal, what it was, all different things. The American Canal, if you believe in Donald Trump, the U.S. Canal. Okay, what was that called? The U.S. Canal. Okay, I said I wouldn't talk politics, so I couldn't help myself. Okay, so there. So I once read a study of what was done with the elderly around the time when the Torah was written. So what was done with the elderly? So there was some people, some cultures, when a person reached a certain age, they would lock them in a cave. Like put a stone on the cave, and that would be that. Other cultures, when a person reached a certain age, they would throw them over the cliff, because locking them in the cave was cruel, because starvation, just throw them off the cliff. Another nation was more pragmatic. They said, well, you're just throwing them off the cliff, like for what? They would feed them to the lions. Like it was a study of how elderly people were killed in antiquity. Now, as these people were killing their elderly, and the machlokes was, how do you kill them? We were studying with Moshe Rabbeinu, with Penei Seva Takum Ve'adaltat Penei Zaken. You think maybe that had an influence on the continuation of humanity and our attitudes towards the elderly? I can't prove it, but I believe yes. I believe that if we didn't contribute that to humanity, I don't know what would have happened. What's happening in Canada, by the way, with their healthcare system, where they kind of encourage people to like, if you don't want to get medical care, we're okay with it. We're not going to pay for it for you, but if you don't take it, it's okay. Like, what am I supposed to do? Well, kind of like put the stone on the cave type thing. Okay, Canada today. So, Western world is an advanced form of humanity, but the Torah is more advanced. So for us, we were the people of the book, because for us, every source of truth came from the book. So just to summarize, and then I'll take some questions. We have Jewish truth, listen, pay attention. Pay attention because God could be speaking to you. And it's not necessarily sound waves traveling, it's things that happen in our lives. So listen carefully, connect what's happening in the cosmos, in your personal life, to what God is always speaking to us every single week on Shabbat. When we read the Torah, that's God speaking to us and telling us the truth, right? So it's right there. So put the two things together. Torah, personal life, cosmos, beautiful things. By the way, if you see something beautiful, say thank you to Hashem. Beautiful. God is like making an artwork for you. He's like painting something for you. Like Yishtabach Shemo, right? Something beautiful happens, say thank you. And then you have the Greek form of thinking, which is very grim, because it assumes that things just exist and there's no meaning to it. It's just, it is. That's what it is. And like, okay, so if you have that view of the world, it becomes a very dreary place to live in. I'm going to end with the following mashal. I think it comes from my father in the Golden Doves, Alav Shalom. The mashal is as follows. Anybody here see the drones, by the way, recently? Drones? Okay. So imagine there's a real spaceship. A real spaceship, meaning, it actually, close encounters of the third kind, right? That spaceship actually lands on Earth. Okay, so the spaceship lands on Earth. In Great Neck, okay? Okay, Middle Neck Road. It's there, but it's empty. Now it's mechanical, you see the engine, you see windows, but then you see inscriptions on the outside. The Greek mind would just look at the spaceship, very interesting, look at the circle, how it's shaped, it's fascinating. How could it be shaped like that? I guess it just is that way. Maybe there was erosion, maybe a meteorite hit it, but here it is. A Jewish mind is going to look at the inscriptions and say, wait, there's a message here. What's the message? Somebody made this spaceship. It didn't just arrive, and it didn't just attain this perfect shape, and it didn't just have this engine, and it didn't just have these like contraptions inside. Somebody navigated the spaceship, and there's like these letters on the outside. Read it. Those are the choices in life. You can be a Greek and just say, okay, the spaceship is here. Wow, look how round it is. It's so nice circle, almost like the Platonic circle. You can be a Jew, intelligent. There's a message. Somebody's trying to tell us something. Just listen to the message. That's it. That's Hanukkah. Okay, if there's any questions, I will take them.
Any questions, anybody?
Okay, you want to?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you something which does not relate to the class.
Okay.
So if anybody has a question, I'll give just another 5 seconds. Done. So, so it was a beautiful class. Hazak Baruch.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And I wanted to ask if you could share, maybe since you're here, if you could share with us just for a couple of minutes, some personal things about who your father was, and you know, a little bit about his I don't know if his ideas, because we discussed it just now, but maybe about his life, or if there's anything you would like to share with us for just a few minutes. I wouldn't want to miss asking you this, since you came all the way from Brooklyn to Great Neck.
Right. So, that's maybe I'll just share with you, you know, 1 or 2 incidents. My father. It really was a very, you know, when I was raised by my father, I didn't realize how special it was. But you know, looking back at it, of course, you know, then I'm an adult, and I realized there were so many special things and so many almost miraculous moments. Maybe I'll just share with you. Like my father had my father, his connection to the Torah was just unbelievable. I mean, he had such. He was always studying Torah. He was always learning. Every day he would have another chidush for me. It was just unbelievable. It was crazy. But I just want to share with you maybe something about my father. So it's just a nice story. You know, maybe one day if you want to invite me, and then I gather my thoughts, and then I would think about what to say. But there's one story that sticks out. Actually, 2 stories that stick out. They're both beautiful stories. So one story that sticks out is, you know, we used to live in Haifa for a while. And in the Knesset, there were some people who were, unfortunately, they were poor, and they really needed help. And we prayed Mincha every day, Mincha Avit in the Knesset. Between Mincha and Avit, there's a Dvar Torah, and I would go during that time, and I would, my father would give me some money, and we give it to the poor person, a specific individual who was needy, and it was a very nice feeling, just very big zechut. And so one day, we were there, and my father was like looking for he forgot the money. I saw my father was really sad. I felt a sense of sadness, and we're kind of leaving the Knesset, and we felt very, you know, very uneasy. And as we're walking in the Knesset, I suddenly bend down. I see, oh my gosh, there's money on the floor. So I picked up the money. My father said, run now to the poor person and give it to him. That was from Hashem. Hashem gave you the money to give to the poor person. So that's one story. But you know, there's a nicer story. This is a great story. Okay. I'm going to tell you something that I don't think you know this one. When my father moved to Israel in the 90s, he was kind of, you know, he was close to 70, he was old. Now, to get a job as a professor in the university in Israel is close to impossible, for the reason that Jews are really smart, and like we have the highest number of professors and academicians in any place in the world. There was a famous Hollywood Squares where they were asking Buddy Hackett, I think that was his name, they asked him, what country has more doctors than any other country per capita in the world? So he says, let's see, where do you have the most, this is in the 70s, where do you have the most Jews? In Israel. He says, okay, so it's in Israel. Israel, yeah, his uncle is a doctor, his son is a doctor, his brother is a specialist. So then they ask the contestant, is that true? He says, it's true. So Buddy Hackett says, you really believe that? So the moderator says, yeah, that was the right answer. The country with the most doctors in the world is actually Israel. It's like, you're gonna believe it? Okay. The country with the most academicians in the world is Israel. So my father was close to 70 years old, and he just moved to Israel. He wanted to retire in Israel. He always believed very strongly in that. But you know, you don't want to retire from what you're doing. So he decided to go to Bar Ilan University and try to find a job as a Talmud professor. Guys are close to 70. It's like, you wait in line with other, 500 people, from yeshiva who all want to be Talmud professors in Bar Ilan. Like, good luck with that. But he had tremendous emunah, and he went with his CV, and he went to Bar Ilan University. It was already the month of October, meaning the term already started. And again, I'm saying good luck with that. Okay, term started. Hundreds of people want that position. So he goes there, and he asks the lady, listen, I want a job as a Talmud professor. She says, go to the Talmud department. He goes to the Talmud department. He says, I want a job as a Talmud professor. So, okay. The lady says, sit down here. This person comes out of some office, and he sees my father, and my father sees him and says, Rabbi, what are you doing here? Do I know you? He says, yes, I used to go to your Monday night classes in Brooklyn every week. So he says, so what do you do? Like my father said, what are you doing here? He says, I'm the head of hiring for the university. So my father said, look, I'm looking for a job as a Talmud professor. So the guy says, that's unbelievable. Just today, the Talmud professor who was teaching quit, and we had to find somebody. The term already started. Are you ready to start immediately? My father said, yes, I'll start immediately. So I didn't know what to talk about. But God was always with him. It was unbelievable. It was it was just incredible to be with a person who always had the presence of the Shekinah with him, yeah, that's just an example, I guess, of the story. So, sorry that I couldn't think of more things. I'm just like, I have so much to say, I don't even know what to
The spontaneous stories that you don't prepare might be the best one.
Yes, okay. All right, so anyway, it was very nice to be here, and I appreciate it.
אני עד נקשה ומרצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות את חלבת השממה לבנה חפץ